I came to South Africa. The first time I came was in 1967. Okay. I only
Okay.
stayed for 2 years and I went back to Greece. And so there I finished matric and then came back here in June the 21st, 1976, which is a while ago. And we all know that it was a very difficult time. Soon after, I'd arrived here in June. By January, I'd been accepted in an ESCOM technician training program. You see, in my mind, engineering has got nothing to do with memory. Either you understand it or you don't. And if you understand it, you don't have to remember anything. It's as plain as me seeing you. Learning has nothing to do with equipment, what labs you have, what books you have, nothing.
Okay.
It has to do with the students taking the concepts and making them their own. What needs to happen is a person needs to sit down, even if it's 5 minutes a day, and just observe. Okay? And through the process of observation, what goes on in a person's mind becomes more apparent and available. So this was the beginning, right? So first I'm observing myself every day, religiously. Every day I'm sitting, okay, fine. Then I go to work, as it were. I look at other people, students in this case, which is great because I have interaction with them. So because of those two elements, it became clear to me within a year or two that actually learning happens when the student's mind gets changed. It became very familiar to me that this inner world is different for each person.
Okay.
Then I would go back to the engineering, my day job, right? And I would look, in those days, fortunately, again, the classes were small, 20 students, that's it. We didn't have these big auditoriums, right? And so it was very personal. I used to know the guys by name. And so I started becoming very, how can I say, it became very clear to me that each student, depending on what they're asking, knowing that they're seeing a different movie in their head, I have to address them where they're at. It doesn't help for me to say, well, this is what the book says. Some what they call encounter groups. Okay, these are environments, 100 or so people get together in a room and come out with explicit and very sensitive personal information. So the emotions in the room are boiling. I mean, it's really pressure stuff. There, what I realized through that experience, adding to what had happened before, what I realized then was, hey, hang on a minute. It's not about knowledge and information. What emotional state I'm in presupposes my state of learning. I was given, let's say, tools and experience of how to interact with that part of the mind that is not conscious. It seemed very pointless because it was information about. There was never any experiential stuff. Perhaps, I don't know, I don't want to preempt this, but perhaps this stuff comes later. But the encounter group that I mentioned before, plus this NLP training, provided me with the tools to have a direct experience, whether it is students or clients or whatever the case may be. So I want to do a master's degree, but I want to do it in the human elements that make engineering practice, push it into excellence. Now, I wanted to do studies about human behavior in engineering environments. And so I went in and I did my master's there. And the topic there was to identify what is it exactly? How do these people's minds work? That what we're talking about is extremely relevant in the engineering world. We want you to come back to the ESCOM Center and do more research because, and this is the crazy part, suddenly, no, well, not suddenly, over many years, they had a huge problem with stress. These guys are getting paid to do this. I mean, it's a beautiful room, soft lighting, the best chairs you can buy in the world, and they have stress. It doesn't make sense. It was so bad in that room. One guy actually shot himself in the bathroom. So I spent a year specifically doing stress intervention techniques. Let's call it interrogation methodology, which asks questions about subconscious processes. We're going to call it tacit or subconscious retrospective verbal protocol. So we're going to be discussing and making explicit subconscious processes that they themselves were not aware of. And so decision making, strangely enough, and there's a guy called Benjamin Libet who demonstrated this by experiments, not theory, right? Who
Yeah.
said in short time frames, decisions are not made through free will. They're made through past conditioning. And I said, okay, well, this is what we found in South Africa. And everybody was over the moon. They said, at last, finally, somebody put into words what we are doing. For everything that we do, there are internal representations. And this is the first video that we did. For everything that we say and do and think, every word that we exchange has to be interpreted. For this to happen, your mind and mine, your brain, whichever way you want to phrase it, produces some kind of a visual or some other information like a movie.
Okay.
So if you are in emotional turmoil, your skills go to zero because the brain, to protect itself, when it's under stress, it literally shuts down all the higher brain functions, and you regress, this is very common, into fight and flight mode. Fight and flight mode, if this is a brain, this is half a brain. This little middle part, that's called the limbic system. It's the emotional center. These are all the higher brain functions. They shut down. And the human part's gone out the window. Why? Because you're under stress. And so you cannot expect anybody who's under stress to have their faculties. I mean, it's no different to what people used to get in the army or the police or any stressful environment where you get exposure to the environment. Whether, let's say, for example, you training, firearm training, whatever it is, you have to have some guns firing next to your ear to get used to the noise. Looking at the brain again, information, this is the front, this is the back. Information coming to this part of the brain gets there faster than the information going to the higher brain functions. Under extreme fatigue or extreme stress, for a person to not be able to distinguish the images that are projected in their mind versus the information that's coming in through the eyeballs. You have to deal with the emotional center, which is the central control room, actually. Okay, so these two have to be dealt together. The individual concern is at the mercy of their subconscious representations, both visually as well as emotionally. Activates memory. It's a peculiar thing, but it also reduces the higher brain. So critical thinking goes out the window, memory goes up, which is what happens to people when they go to war. And when they come back, they have post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. What happens is the recording has happened so powerfully that when they go home, they can't switch the damn thing off. Now, in South Africa, this is even a much bigger problem because why? We have cultural differences. Some people behave this way, others interpret it that way. Others people say this, others understand that. It's a minefield. And if you bring race into it, well, then good luck. Then it's just, it's a dog's breakfast. I mean, whether you're a student, whether you're learning or writing exams, whether you're a professional, especially when the environment around you is stressful. And stressful does not mean physical stress. Mental stress can be even more insidious because there's nothing to see, but it's all happening inside. It can tell me what this is. Of course, it's a hand. But what is it made of? Well, it's made of cells. Okay, what are they made of? Well, they're made of atoms. Okay, what are they made of? Well, neutrons and protons and electrons. Okay, what are they made of? Well, quarks. Okay, what are they made of? Nobody knows. There's a thing called the Blue Brain Project in Europe, and they're trying to, through computerized hardware and software and so on, they're trying to model the workings of a brain, neuron for neuron. They got to the stage of a rat. Now, obviously, the computing power for this is like, and so what do they find? They find that the kind of mathematical, let's call them algorithms that they need to use in order to simulate the working of neurons in a rat brain. This is the crazy part. That mathematics requires 11 dimensions. Yes. And I'm going to give you two more references. The first one is a guy here at UCT, wonderful fellow, professor of neuroscience, Mark Soms, S-O-L-M-S, Mark Soms. Go and look him up on YouTube. He's got some work that he published as far as consciousness goes, and he demonstrates this is not theory. Consciousness is before all the brain functions happen. It's more fundamental. There's another
Wow.
guy called Anil Seth, S-E-T-H. Also go on YouTube. He's got a wonderful TED Talk, very simple. Anyone can understand it, where he says the experiments we've done show what? Show that people, what he calls hallucinate reality, which means what? It means the brain inside here
Yeah.
creates a model of what it thinks is going on. Before, look up Benjamin Libet, L-I-B-E-T. This guy demonstrated by implanting electrodes inside people's brains, okay? He created an experiment, I'm not going into it now, in which a person is given a decision. Do you want a pear or an apple? And you say, I want apple. And he could measure the response time. What he found was the part of the brain that was busy activating the hand and the voice and all the rest of it was working way before the person was conscious of the making of the decision.
Mm.
And then we don't have a cooking clue. How on earth is electrical activity and chemistry converted into an experience? I mean,
Yes. Yeah, you're right.
so what is this? This is meat, okay?
Yeah.
So somehow meat produces pictures and consciousness? How that, what? For the last 5 years in particular, consciousness is now called the hard problem of consciousness. Wow. And so we have an opportunity. At the same time, we have a challenge because there's such a great variety here. Taking the information and making up movies. And on the second level, emotional stability within an environment that will challenge you to switch off your brain. If you bring ChatGPT into this discussion and you take the normal average student, what I'm saying by that is somebody who's studying without knowing why they're studying. They just want the paper. They want to learn engineering. They just want a diploma or a degree to get a job. For those people, ChatGPT, they're going, in my opinion, it's a bold statement, is going to reduce them to bricks. They're not going to be human anymore. Now imagine this. You've got a bunch of people sitting around the room trying to make a decision about something they know nothing about. And so, metaphorically speaking, they looked into their mind. Do we need generation? And they saw nothing. It was like literally
Blank.
darkness. This can have consequences like you can't imagine. As the engineering fraternity slowly becomes aware of what's really going on. Engineers understand this. You don't have to sell them the idea. The screen is the final interface. The real stuff is happening out of awareness in the motherboard. It's the same with brains. Not identical. There are other dimensions, but let's not go there.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, when a person says or does something, it's driven by forces that remain invisible. If we can work on the motherboard, then we can fix the problems on the screen.